I have always wanted to teach, but as I've grown up, my why has changed significantly. When I was in elementary school, I was a pretty average little girl, sometimes nerdy and quiet, and sometimes absolutely crazy. I may have been different, though, in the fact that I truly loved school and everything about Garden Ridge Elementary. I would even come home from class, organize all my stuffed animals, and pretend like I was now the teacher, teaching my stuffed bunnies and dogs everything that I had learned that day. I had an attendance sheet with all of their names, made up which ones would be the good or the bad students, and gave them grades accordingly. I let my imagination run wild. I wanted to be able to have complete control of my own classroom, and I couldn't wait to be a teacher. When I went to middle school, though, my whole life kind of flipped around. For whatever reason, I was so nervous to go to school. The transition was just too much for me, and I would throw up before going to school every day just because I was so nervous about it. And this continued on for months. And it got so bad that my mom had me visit the school counselor, and I was extra nervous to go to school that day. But Mrs. White reassured me that the feelings I had were valid. She talked me through everything, and I felt better. I started building relationships with my other teachers and students who knew me to be more sensitive and anxious than most, and they helped me get through the biggest change in my life thus far. I wanted to be able to do that for someone else, to help them through their toughest times, to be there for them whenever they needed me, and I couldn't wait to be a teacher. When I got to high school, I had grown up a lot. I'd battled my anxieties for the last 3 years and felt pretty okay coming into something new. I was on the varsity softball team and in varsity choir all 4 years, so I had to miss a decent amount of class in the spring for tournaments or concerts, and my teachers were always so flexible. Not only were they supportive in the classroom, but some of my teachers became my biggest cheerleaders. Mrs. Barclay never missed a single softball game. When I had a solo in the Big Pop Show at the end of the year, Coach Lariba and Coach Burkhart rallied all the girls to come and cheer on my opening night. When I had my first playoff game, Mrs. Martinez organized everyone together to make this sign for me. On my senior night, Dr. Rohr came to watch and organized that I would sing the national anthem for the game. I wanted to support students in everything that they did, to be the person that showed up at every game, every recital, that took a personal interest in each one of my students. And I couldn't wait to be a teacher. When I went off to college, the old anxieties from middle school came back, as I was away from my family for the first time. Not playing softball anymore, not singing in the choir. Everything was different, and I was scared. My roommate grew up in the area, so she had a lot of friends at the university, so I followed her around. And I followed her to First Baptist Church in Commerce on Sunday, August 28th in 2016. And that day, I heard the gospel presented, that Jesus came down from heaven and lived a perfect life, died on the cross for my sins, a death that I deserved, and conquered death 3 days later by rising again, demonstrating God's grace and His power simultaneously, allowing me to have a relationship with Him, one where He does not change. And I heard that message and I felt peace. I would live my life for that kind of love. And so for the past 3 years, that's what I've attempted to do. When it came to my profession, I still planned on teaching, but I started to doubt my own abilities. Was I smart enough? Could I articulate the material in a way that would make sense for my students? What if I fail? Through all these questions, I realized that I had planned my entire life to become a teacher, but I hadn't given that up to God yet. And so I did. Over this last year, I've prayed for some sort of answer, to make sure that I wasn't just sticking to my own plans, but that I would be obedient and trusting God to lead me where He wants me, for my good and more importantly, for His glory. After months, I believe I got my answer when I observed for the first time this semester. Mrs. Tate, a wonderfully goofy algebra teacher who loved her students. She immediately went to give me advice. Through it all, she kept mentioning that she was created for this. I asked her what she meant by it, and she revealed her why to me. Just like me, she accepted Jesus when she was a freshman. She spent her college years growing through the Baptist student ministry, just as I have. She prayed for her parents to accept Christ for 20 years before they did. I'm currently on year 3. And suddenly, I was holding back tears as she told me that she knew, despite having a completely different job for 10 years, that God created her to be a teacher, to share His love with her students who may never get to experience it anywhere else. And then, everything else, wanting to be in control of my own classroom, wanting to help kids through their tough times, wanting to be their biggest cheerleader, suddenly got pushed back on the priority list. And for the first time, I feel truly at peace with my future. And I can't wait to be a teacher.